Hi, Doug. Thank you so much for joining our show. Good evening from Vietnam.
Well, nice to see you. Good evening to everyone in Vietnam, and good morning from the United States.
Good morning to you. Good evening from here. And thank you so much for spending your morning with our Insight Sharing programs. We've been interviewing a lot of amazing people, and having you to our program and sharing your journey with our audience is really appreciated. And to kick off for this whole conversation, could you please help us to introduce who you are and what you've been doing to our audience, please?
Okay, I'll do that. Doug Leonard. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been a consultant for about 26 years now. I specialize in working with executive teams. I don't do a lot of individual coaching. I tend to coach teams,
Mm,
and I'm also a speaker.
mm,
My work is very spread out, if you will. I don't specialize in any industry or particular type of thing. Anywhere there's people, which is everywhere, is where I land. And I'm almost 65 years old, and I'm starting to transition a little bit into development of online learning courses.
mm.
So that's kind of a quick snapshot of what I do, and I can certainly go deeper as we talk about those things.
We will definitely go deeper about that. All right. So for now, we're gonna put uh, the understanding is that you have been teams to grow for the time being. All right. It will allow us to bring you back to when you were very young. So each of us when we were young, we always have like dreams, right? One day we're gonna grow up and become this type of person, do this kind of job, right? And we would like to know what's the young version of Doug, like to become when you were young, Doug.
Okay, well, that's pretty easy because of my age and what was happening in the world at the time. My first thing that I wanted to be was an astronaut because
Ah,
I grew up watching those first people being launched into space, and I just thought that that was the coolest thing ever. And I couldn't read enough about the planets and my mother tells me I could name the planets before I could name other important things because I was just devouring that kind of information. So for the longest time, that was my aspiration to
yeah.
be to be an astronaut.
Why didn't you become one then? What happened?
Well, life happens,
Hmm.
things occur. As I started to grow up, like most kids, I guess, in the States, obviously I fell in love with sports, and sometimes I thought, I'd like to be a professional athlete, but I didn't have enough skill to do that, of course.
Hmm.
My love of science never went away, and I
Hmm.
still have it. When I was in high school, I focused on taking as many science and math courses as I possibly could. And
Hmm.
when I went to college, I enrolled as a chemistry major
Oh.
and studied chemistry for a couple years. I ended up changing my major, and I can't really tell you why. And sometimes when I look back, I sort of regret pulling out of the chemistry field because I did enjoy it so much. But I shifted gears. I became very interested in philosophy. I went to a Catholic university, and because it was a Catholic school, we had mandatory either religion or philosophy classes. So I started taking philosophy. I ended up with a philosophy minor. And I also ended up majoring in economics and leadership management. And but really, the interesting thing is probably some of the most valuable courses I took were my philosophy courses
Hmm.
because you learn to read, you learn to write, you learn to defend positions.
Hmm.
it created thinking instead of memorization
Mm.
type of activities.
Mm.
And I found it so valuable to have those skills. Even when I started interviewing for jobs when I graduated, sometimes people would look at my resume and look at that philosophy and shake their head. And I'd say, hey, it was the best things I took, believe it or not.
Mm. Absolutely.
So that's pretty far from being an astronaut.
Not
Yeah.
only far from the astronaut, also far from being a sport athlete, also, right?
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
but that's what life is. We always have something that we dream, and then somehow, someone life will lead us to something that's different. Doesn't mean that we are not capable of doing that. It's just that the priority has shifted, and then we just go into a different path in our life, and that's it. Even if
Right.
you say that you had some regrets about dropping out of the chemistry major, but maybe that's a calling for your life. We never know, right? In Asia culture, we always believe in what things happen for a reason, and look at the journey, how it ends. It happened for good reason also. So Job, I
Sure.
hold no regrets. Okay.
Yep. Well, and you just said something important that sometimes I end up talking to my clients
Mm,
about. There's a difference between being capable of something,
mm,
talented in something, and being passionate about it.
mm,
So we often get good at things that we like, or maybe even things we don't like. But when we're doing those, we feel very differently than those things that we're passionate about. You get that special energy from your passions, and that's a mistake sometimes organizations or leaders make. If I get good at something that I don't really care for, and in business, oftentimes when you get good at something, they want to give you more of it. And you can actually be demotivating me by increasing the amount of work I'm doing
mm.
around things that I'm not very passionate about, even though I'm capable or talented
Yep.
in. So, and that person's journey to really figure out what they're most passionate about doing,
Mm,
what gives them that natural energy,
mm,
where they're excited to go to work and contribute to
mm.
the success of the organization in a way that not only helps the company or the organization succeed, but also makes them feel really good about how they're contributing. That's a win-win.
Yep. And then that is the gift that you're receiving from life, also from living, because a lot of people around us are working without passion, without living, without purpose, and 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 every day they are living the day, trying to figure out what's next for them, and I think all of us we've been through that stage, and you've been able to find out about that early. So let us examine next from your university age. So you study philosophy, economics, and math, right? And then you get out of university. What happened after that before you get into the journey in consulting, though?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that happened was it took me a good 3 months to find a job. And I was interviewing like everyone did. And a lot of jobs that where they were interested in hiring me, I wasn't so interested in taking to
Mm,
start. And my father kept on pushing me. He wanted me to take sales jobs,
uh,
and I wasn't interested in selling things. What I've learned, and I'll come back to that first job, but what I learned about myself, especially through some of the tools that I employ with the companies I work with now, is I'm good at selling concepts. I'm not really good at selling widgets,
yeah.
right? I have a difficult time selling you a pen, but I could sell you ideas and concepts. And I get excited about selling that. So while my father's going, hey, you should take that sales job, I'm like, no, I don't want it. So I took a job with an industrial engineering and construction firm,
Mm,
which is kind of an interesting first job. And what appealed to me was really you got to do a lot of different things.
mm,
It wasn't sort of a pigeonhole type role where I was going to be doing one thing.
mm,
And I learned a lot of different things in that job. I stayed there about 5 years,
Mm.
and I was working in an office, but I also traveled to steel mills and different industrial sites that the company worked on. I learned, to be better about numbers and costing out construction or jobs that you bid. I learned union negotiation stuff. A lot of our employees were union. I
Ah.
learned, I learned about computers because they were becoming more and more, prevalent. The computer I used, the floppy disk, the old days when people didn't know what a floppy disk was, it was about the size of a 12-inch record album.
Ah.
You know,
Wow.
and it held almost no data compared, the like a stick that we use, like a USB stick we would use now, would hold like 50 million of those floppy disks.
Mm.
We thought it was pretty sophisticated at the time.
It was
But
sophisticated,
it
though.
was a really rounded job that helped me learn a lot of different things and kind of and figure out what it was that I might really want to gravitate to. And it was also during that time that I went back to school at night to get my MBA.
Oh, why did you choose to go back for MBA degree then?
Well, because at that point I pretty much thought I was going to end up in business.
Ah.
And I just figured it was a natural progression, of my education to get an MBA.
And then what the journey after that?
Well, it was very interesting. At the time, I was a marathoner and I ran every day. And then I
Mm.
was out for a run on my lunch hour, and there was a guy that I noticed from our gym, and he was limping along, and he twisted his ankle or something. So I stopped to check with him and see if he was okay. Was there anything I could do? I didn't even know his name. You know how it is. You're in a gym and there's hundreds of people, but you recognize the faces.
Ah.
So I ended up walking with him back to the gym, and it turned out that he ran a law firm in Pittsburgh. And
Oh.
there was a law firm in his building that was one floor below where he worked. And he said they were looking for someone to run the law firm.
Ah.
And I was ready for a change. I applied, and next thing you know, I'm now running a law firm. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I was running the business of the law firm.
And then in America, you don't have a legal, lawyer degree. You still can run the law firm.
Yes, because you're
Ah.
doing the administration of the law firm,
Ah.
right?
Yeah, okay. And then,
Anything that wasn't anything that wasn't a case was my responsibility.
but see, though, that's a beautiful of life, right? You went out for running for the marathon, help a friend to get back, and eventually ended up, landing a different kind of job that we never know what happened, in the future. And then a kindness, a gesture of kindness is always, bring out us something good, right? Oh, so
Absolutely.
I will share that
And
story.
believe me, as this unveils, you'll see how monumental that actually turned out to be.
Mm, that's actually is beautiful. And then how after what happened after the running the law firm though?
Well, I spent about 3 years at the law firm,
Mm.
and we had a client that was based in Tucson, Arizona,
Mm.
and they did hospital laboratory software work,
Mm.
anatomical pathology, microbiology, blood banking, all of those type of things. And the gentleman that created or started the firm was pretty bright, and it was his vision to make the technology and the information to laboratory workers be sped up, so they
Ah.
had results faster and could get things to doctors quicker.
Mm.
And the partner who managed that account's office was next to mine.
Ah.
And this gentleman's name was Dr. Goldblatt. He just passed away about 5 months ago. He would sometimes wander into my office and sit down and talk to me. And especially if the attorney needed to take a call that was private or something like that.
Mm.
And we sort of hit it off, and he asked me to come to work for him. So the next thing I know, I'm moving to Tucson, Arizona to work for the software development company.
But how can you work in
So that
very,
was another
very...
pretty radical shift, right?
Ah,
I went from
I
industrial
know.
engineering, construction to law. Now I'm working in technology, developing hospital software.
And how could how could you survive in three different industry like that, and then require a lot of different skill set also, right? you know,
Yes, it did.
ah,
Yes,
share with us.
I think I think what happened in that role and what appealed to Dr. Goldblatt was the fact that I learned quickly, and I didn't really. I would do anything in essence. If it was my role, I would do it. And so I used to tell people that my job title was vice president of anything that Dr. Goldblatt dreams up. So I did all kinds of things that weren't really what I went there to do originally. We were growing so fast, we made the Inc. 500 3 years in a row.
Wow.
When I showed up, we had roughly 100 hospitals in the US and Canada using the software. By the time I left, there were over 900, approaching 1,000.
So 9
The
times.
number of employees, yeah, I mean, we were growing exponentially. So we moved. I took the leading role in moving the company and everything associated with relocation. We used to fly all the lab technicians to Tucson to train on the software, and while they were training, our installers were back in their home laboratory putting the computers and the systems in, and then they would fly back and finish their training in their own lab. And we had such high travel expenses. At the time, Dr. Goldblatt says we should start our own travel agency. So I did. I started a travel agency where we ran all our travel and all our clients' travel through the travel agency. So I just did all kinds of things.
So you left the company and the software company that they're building the equipments and the software, right? And then you work for a travel agency?
No, I created a travel agency as part of our company.
Within that organization.
Yes.
So you harmonize all the training, all the travels, and administer all of that for the staff, right? And
yes.
And then what after after the 3 years?
Well, this is interesting. A friend of mine's father was elected the presiding judge of the court system in Allegheny County, which encompasses the city of Pittsburgh. And he said to me, my dad's now the president judge and responsible for this massive court system. He has no idea how to run it.
Oh.
He said, can he call you and ask you questions? So in short, if I shorten this as much as I can, in essence, for a couple months, I would take a phone call once a week or twice a week, and I would just talk to him, and I would give him questions to ask people so he could learn things or make suggestions. Meanwhile, I don't know much about a court system. I understood a law firm, but having worked at a law firm, but I didn't really understand the court system. And at one point, he said, I don't want to ask you these questions anymore through Tucson. I'd like you to move back to Pittsburgh and run the court system. Oh. So I moved back to Pittsburgh and I became the court administrator of Allegheny County. So I was responsible for the criminal courts, the civil courts, the family courts, adult probation, juvenile probation, and probate courts, essentially. And again, it was like the law firm. I didn't do anything legal, but I ran everything else, the budget, all the administrative activities. And it was pretty interesting because at the time I was 32 years old. So I was pretty young. Most of the judges were almost twice my age, and certainly I didn't come. I didn't come from the court system, and everybody was sort of wondering where the heck did this guy come from? Right?
Well, tell you the truth. When I was in the States, I got several speeding tickets, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
sitting in front of the judge and yeah, and defense our case horrifies. It was horrified to me. I didn't know even why it horrified to me because I've been talking to a lot of people. I am so confident in my ability to deal with people, but sitting there to defend my why I've been over over speeding scared the heck out of me though. So
I
later,
bet. I bet.
so if later on if I came back to the state for traveling or anything and I might got into the speeding ticket, I would call them and say, hey, how do I deal with the judge to be
Exactly. Absolutely. You would call me or you would call my wife because she knows that too very well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for running that court, what happened after that though?
Yeah, well, essentially, I guess the big I was there about 6 years in the
Mm,
court. But in year 5 or 4.5, things really started to change.
mm,
Um, I became involved in the court management. I was president of the Pennsylvania Court Management Association. I traveled to the National Judicial College to study jury systems and how we could make the juries more representative of the defendants in the trials. And the way everybody was selecting juries was pretty similar. You would do it off motor vehicles and voter registration, but we were trying to expand the pool of potential jurors. I mean, I got involved in all kinds of interesting projects like that, but I started to get a little antsy, and the politics starts to wear you down in a position
mm,
like that.
mm.
I used to think I'd spend more time in the county solicitor's office fighting lawsuits or something than it was doing something productive. So there was a judge by the name of Max Baer who was the head of the family division of the court.
Mm.
And he was cutting edge around foster care, adoptions, those type of things. And he wanted to put in a mandatory child mediation program. So if somebody was either filing custody or an amendment to an existing custody order, they would have to go to mediation first.
Ah.
And I trained as a mediator. I ended up leaving the court, and I was going to start my own businesses. And meanwhile, my wife and I bought an ice cream store. So we started running an ice cream store
And this
on the
one.
side. Yeah. Because ice cream is just like everything else I've been doing, right?
Yeah.
So we have an ice cream store. But for 2 years, I mediated child custody cases while I started doing some other things as well.
Mm,
And mediating child custody cases was a very interesting, important work. In essence, what we wanted to do in the program was try to have the parents make decisions, responsible decisions about their children, rather than having lawyers, masters, judges make decisions for the parents. And the program is still going on today, so it's been around like almost 30 years. And it doesn't always work. Some parties in any dispute are not ready to come together for an agreement. But on the other hand, sometimes it worked famously. And the agreements that the parents carved out were superior to anything that was going to get ordered by the court.
So Max was the one that created that one, that whole.
Yes.
So to me that's very very humanized, solution, because as the child has no problem at all. It's the adult issues. and then fighting over
Right.
something for a child, and then in front, and whether or not the child is consciously knowing that is is plural. So I think that that idea of having the custodies and the discussion before that, before going too deep into the legal system, is always a good thing to do, and mediating for this is wonderful, right?
Yeah. Well, and let's face it, the judge doesn't really want to make a decision either. I mean, he or she will because it's their job.
Yeah.
It's what they're there for, but they don't want to do it. They'd rather have the parents do it. So, when the parents could step up and do it, it was a good thing. And concurrent to that, there was another program created, which was called Generations. And it was essentially a place where the kids whose parents were divorcing could spend time together. And there were more or less social workers there that helped them understand that the divorce really didn't have anything to do with them. Right? It wasn't their fault. It was something that was going on between the parents. Then they got to meet other children that were going through the same thing, so they understood it wasn't just them that was experiencing this. And so the two of those programs together really supported each other in much of that human way that you just spoke to.
Wow. You still in connection to Max? Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm still very much in touch with Max. As a matter of fact, we're going to Africa together. My wife and he and his wife, the four of us are on that Africa trip. So,
is that possible? If I can ask you, if one day you can introduce me to him? I think that I really love to have a talk with him regarding to this also. Because I would like to pick his brain. Why did he thought of having this program at the beginning, and how he lobbied to get that becoming ineffective. That was not easy, but it's very human way of doing things. So I think we really love to do that. But that is a topic that we can discuss later. Next story is all about you. So what happened after that 2 years?
Well, while I was mediating cases, that wasn't really full time. It was part time. You took as many cases as you could get during the week, but I was looking for other things, and so I ended up investing in a company, and that investment didn't go particularly well. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was far from the very best thing. And I was introduced to the Berkman method, which is a very sophisticated profiling tool. And that profiling tool, I certified in 1996, and I still use it today. It's the core of just about everything I do. And it is, this goes back to my science days. It's an incredibly well-researched scientific tool. When you take the survey, which roughly takes about 30 minutes, there are so many different scales, and the scales are incredibly sophisticated. There are about 95 million scoring possibilities.
Wow.
So rather than some of these assessments that put you in one of 4 boxes or something like that, you have this incredibly rich data source. And that data on a person is like their DNA or their blood work. And I can look at a person or a team and rapidly assess what's going on, or potentially what's going on with that team through that data, just like a doctor would look at somebody's blood work and make the same kind of an assessments about a person. So that, and what drew me to that was a number of things. One of the things that I was fascinated about in everything I did up to that point, in all of these diverse kind of roles I took, is why some teams sort of just gelled and excelled and were performing at very high levels, and why other teams floundered or struggled. and people wanted to leave a team, and obviously some of that goes to the immediate leader, but I thought there might be more behind it. And to me, having access to this data was like unlocking the source code to all of those questions. And so I ended up joining a very small boutique consulting company that crafted all of their solutions using that Berkman data.
So the Berkman is the foundation for organization to understand the behavior
Yes.
and of the employees and the team, so that your organization can use it to create the training solution, the development solution that can help people to create the cohesions and making them effective teams, right? And
Yes.
isn't that the journey that takes you 20 something years in the consulting firms?
Yes. Absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm coming from the background in the consulting business also. So we've been working for human resource industry and helping organization to find talent solutions. So Berkman is not something that new to me. We've been doing Berkman, imaginary, and there's a lot of like MBTI and everything that we do, and I think
Sure.
Berkman is something that is very effective to make the a training to put people together to get them to understand the different versions of who they are and the strength and the weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, I think Berkman's superpower
mm,
is its ability to separate the way we've learned to show up.
mm,
What Berkman calls, as you would know, usual behavior or strength.
yeah,
That is our learned and socialized behavior, which is impacted to some extent by social desirability.
mm,
And however, as you know, Berkman measures the innate person, the
mm,
person on the inside.
mm,
And most people are pretty different on the inside than they are on the outside.
mm,
And learning to lead and manage people to the inside, which is not visible to the external world,
mm,
really is the most important thing about that instrument in many ways. And then, of course, when those innate needs are unmet, it triggers that reactive stress behavior. So it puts people in a counterproductive behavior. Just last week, I was with executives in an insurance company in the U.S., the largest insurance company in the United States, and these leaders probably have thousands of agents that end up working for them. And I really focused almost the whole program on the significance of needs and worked through lots of different scenarios with those leaders of how they can be more effective using those, understanding those motivational needs of the people that work for them.
yeah. I think that amazingly that you did that in 1999, right? And then 2020, 2019 is when the world started to tell leaders to be authentic, to lead from your true self and things like that. So for a very long time, we've been leading with cosmetic in our face, cosmetic in our heart, and been run, the organization vision mission without truly living. And I feel unfortunate for a lot of us, including myself also, because we were not able to really express how we feel, but I think that with the pandemic comes and organizations starting to realize the importance of, we have to be, let go of our guard so that we can be truly who we are. And it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes. It's okay to be, to make mistakes and be, that's part of human beings, right? Leader is no superhero. Yeah. But
Yes,
it's beautiful things. Yeah.
absolutely. You're spot on. Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, that's another thing that one of the things I did during the pandemic was I certified in psychological safety. And psychological safety is such an emerging, sometimes I worry when things get hot because people want to jump on it and then they jump off because something else becomes hot.
Yeah.
But the Berkman needs data. Once again, the data in the needs, that innate self, it essentially is how a person uniquely describes how they want to be included. And the first stage of psychological safety is inclusion safety. And so when I mesh the Berkman with psychological safety, when I'm working with a team or an organization, that's the first thing I'm looking at. When you're paying attention to that, if I'm treating you in the way that you expect based upon that internal self, the world's going to be good for you because that's what you want. That's how you see it. That's how you describe your own inclusion. And so, we can get diversity right by the optics, if you will, if I could say that. We can get men, women, people from all kind of races, creeds, whatever. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily diverse cognitively.
Yep.
They can still be similar, right? So it's more than that. And we are so unique. That's why there's 95 million scoring possibilities in the Berkman, right? So we're going to be different. And because the inside part is not visible, you can't look at my behavior and understand necessarily how I expect you to treat me or how I think situations should be managed. So if we pay attention to that, then it takes out some of the problem of getting along, which we may blame on the optics, right? You don't understand me because you're not a woman, or you don't understand me because you're not Asian American, whatever, right? No, that's not it. We don't understand each other because we see the same thing differently. Your expectations and my expectations are different, right? You may like very direct conversations. I may like more diplomatic conversations. That doesn't have anything to do with anything except the way we've learned or expected that things will work. So
thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, because one of the sad thing about seeing how things around us operating is if we really put attention into what organizations around us are doing, it's very, very limiting companies out there really truly do diversity, inclusions, and belongings. The rest is just like checklists and checklists and checklists. And, the task given to the people who are not qualified to do that, doesn't have the knowledge to do that, don't even have the right intention to doing that, don't even have the right tools and equipments that can help them to doing that, and all we see is just activities showing off that we're promoting inclusions here, we're promoting diversity in here, but that doesn't solve what rotted from within, right? So thanks for brought that up.
Absolutely.
It makes us, or the audience who listen to this conversation, really need to revisit the practice that they are doing if they would want to create a good culture of that leading to a future where we make people feel that they belong in, and make work and life truly integrating though. So I'm curious a little bit about the work that you do. Do you provide online training for companies overseas for that program for Bergman? I forgot about this whole program for a long time, and
Well, yes. In short, yes. I mean, I do things online. I've done work. I have a casual partnership. It's not a legal partnership with 3 African women. 2 are Nigerian and one's from Ghana. And I've been doing some work in Africa with those 3 women. And obviously that's all virtual. I thought I was going to Lagos before the pandemic, but that was canceled. So everything was done. And I'm developing online courses to be put out. I've mentioned earlier that I'm starting to sort of segue in that direction. So yes, I do. I do, in fact. And I'm very passionate about helping people learn to use the Berkman. I when they're open to adding it their toolkit, if you will.
Mm.
I love helping people understand that better. That's one of the ways I give back at this point. I help a lot of people in the States who have embraced it to get better at it.
Sure. I think that with the pandemics, basically it makes us to rethink of how we work, right? The things that we think is working well, it now need to revisit everything all over again, and it goes back to the very basics of us as a human. What is it that we want to? What is it that we truly want to? And I think the Bergman assessment is, is one of the very beautiful assessment that can help us to, to get the in and out and connect the people from. So let's see how we can be doing it together, and we never know what happens, right? Like you have your friend from the gym that got you a job at the law firm.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, let me go back to the law for a moment, if I can.
Please.
If you go back to about 2008, at that point, my friend Max, who worked at the Common Pleas Court in Allegheny County, had been elected to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. And within the court system, there's a body which is called the Disciplinary Board. And the Disciplinary Board's role is to protect the consumers of the legal services, if you will. There's a set of rules called, the professional rules of conduct, and every lawyer who's admitted to the bar is held to following those rules of conduct. Max put me on the Disciplinary Board. It's comprised of lawyers mostly, but there's 2 lay people on the board. So they want the perspective of the non-lawyer on the board. And he put me there because of my work with people and behavioral science, if you will. And so I ended up serving and hearing cases on the Disciplinary Board for over 8.5 years. And I ended up being the chair of the Disciplinary Board my last year, and obviously the deputy chair the year before. So I found that work really rewarding and important, and I was very encouraged how well lawyers often in the United States get a bad rap for lots of reasons, but I was very proud of how well they did protect their profession. And not only did we suspend lawyers or disbar lawyers who probably should not be practicing law, we also reinstated lawyers. So if a lawyer, fell into trouble for whatever reason, a lot of times it was just because of human issues. They became an alcoholic, or they got addicted to drugs or gambling. When they put their life back together, when they fought back against that illness and proved that they could practice law again, we also reinstated lawyers. So it wasn't just let's disbar lawyers and suspend lawyers, but it was reclaiming the lives of lawyers too, which then led me to get involved in the Institute for Well-Being in Law, and I still participate as a volunteer. And it's a national movement to help improve the working conditions and the well-being of everybody that works in law, not just lawyers, the paralegals, the legal secretaries, whoever is in the legal system. It's a very difficult job. It's a very high pressure.
My wife and I, we talked about it, a few years back, how stressful lawyer is and will be, because we've been having a lot of friends who actually practicing laws, and imagine an individual holding a lot of information from within, but you cannot talk to anybody because of a lot of regulations, a lot of watching over your shoulder of what you've been saying, what you've been hearing, and things like that. we're not even leaving, and and for
Right.
that I told my wife, they got pay high, that is, that should be the way it is. They got compensated well, that should be the way it is. We cannot do that kind of job. And like you say today, because we're all human beings, right? And then, when we're under a lot of stress, we fall into category that we don't even know that we might be falling in. So, the program that you are volunteering doing is the way that, we give people second chances to, to come back, and everybody deserves
Yes.
second chance. Well,
Yes. Absolutely.
I know that you are about to go into Africa for, for 3 weeks with your friends, Max, his wife, and your wife, and I wish it to be a safe trip and with a lot of good memories. Okay, and before I let you go, I want to ask one last question. One last question: is there any exciting things besides, going to Africa, that you are doing, about to do, and you would like to share with me, with our audience, so that we can celebrate with you in advance?
Well, there's probably a number of them, but one just jumps to mind.
Ah,
There's an executive that I worked with for years, and
ah,
it was a client, and she retired about a year ago.
ah,
And she worked for an insurance company, and she never really used her major in the insurance company. She was a graduate of Harvard in government.
mm,
And in the insurance company, her specialty was, continuous improvement, lean, that type of thing, becoming more efficient in processes. And she started an organization called Win Together,
win
which
together.
is which is focused on helping municipal governments and to be better,
Mm,
to get better. And they've already worked with a couple small cities, and it's a startup. And everything that they're doing is kind of a hard skill, right? It's the lean, it's process, it's these the Shingo is the Shingo model. Um, and so she asked me to be part of that, to bring the human side to this, and to
cool.
also create some online courses for their platform. And so I'm pretty excited about that new opportunity. And one of the things I loved when I worked in the court system is I knew every day what my responsibility was. It was to all the citizens of the county, roughly 2.5 million people. It was my job to run that court efficiently, effectively, be a good steward of tax dollars, take my fiscal responsibility seriously, and I
Mm,
did that, and and it was rewarding, because it wasn't just about making the CEO richer, or and so Win Together, if I think back about my work at the disciplinary board, or some other public type things I did, it's kind of a exciting project to start right on the ground floor with them and see where this goes.
wow, wonderful. And Deb, I know a lady, her name is Deborah Heiser. So she's a PhD in psychology, and she's the founder for the Mentor Project. So they basically, what they do is to bring mentors to schools, and and start to giving back to the communities of youngsters, of school, of students. If you don't mind, allow me to introduce you to them, and then that, we try to connect the world and make it a better place, better every day. Is that okay if I do that?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. uh, when is your trip to Africa?
Beginning of August.
Beginning of August. So
I
I'll
think we
check back.
leave like August. We leave August 2nd.
Okay, I'll check back with you on by the end of July to wish you a wonderful trip. So to make sure that I will note on my calendar to make sure I do that. It's a
Well,
pleasure to
thank you.
meet you today, and thank you so much for spending your. You're very generous to spending your time and sharing your journey with us. I hope that you do have a good time and to reflect and relive the in the journey that you've been through, and I really thank you for that. Okay.
Well, thank you. I mean, this was fun. It was really enjoyable to do this. And I sort of like the fact that it was unscripted, right? You just kind of talk from your heart,
Yeah.
whatever comes up. It was wonderful.
It is,
So,
right? We love improv conversation like that. So instead of having a lot of question in advance, what's the fun about it anymore? We're not media, we're not journalists.
right, absolutely. I love it. It's great.
And thank you so much. I need to get going now, and I know that you have a lot of things to do. Also, enjoy win together, enjoy your trip, and I'll check back with you by the end of July to wish you everything well. All right?
Thank you very much. The same back to you.
Okay.
All the
Thank you.
best.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening to you. Good day to you.